Morris. I'm the president of the board of Ottawa Renewable Energy Co-op, and the presentation today is going to just give a little bit of a history of OREC, a little bit about the solar feed-in tariff program in Ontario, and then also introduce the structure of our share system and what we're offering in terms of preference share and some of the rules. So just a little history about why OREC came to be is that several people, and myself included, found that we couldn't put our own system on our own house. In order to make community power a reality for everyone, then we said, well, why don't we form a co-op to pool resources from members and buy investments in larger solar systems and provide a return that way. So we're providing an opportunity for a long-term investment in the community. This is very similar to if you did have your own system. You're investing in the solar system. It pays you a dividend in terms of revenue over a 20-year period, according to your contract with the Ontario Power Authority. It earns members a reasonable return on investment. These are kind of our objectives, really. We are able to make it RSP eligible with certain conditions, and certain amounts is a minimum amount that really makes it worthwhile. As I say, we earn the revenue for the co-op by having 20-year contracts, power supply contracts with the Ontario Power Authority through their feed-in tariff program, which I'll describe in a minute. So our kind of objective is to put clean local power to the grid, and at the same time creating jobs and economic development. This is one of our other main objectives, is to provide economic development in Ottawa as well as to provide a reasonable return. Just an indication of to some people haven't seen this map before, but you can see there that Eastern Ontario is actually a very good place to put solar. It's the second best location in the country in terms of amount of solar energy that we receive. So it is actually a very good spot to invest in solar relative to, say, some of the other places in Ontario or in the West. This is kind of indication of where we fit in the overall worldwide in terms of the amount of solar energy. See, we're not as good, obviously, as some of the ones in Mediterranean or in the prairies, but we're certainly better than a lot of other places in Europe. Many places, including Germany, where the solar regime is actually quite low, but they've done a huge job in terms of developing the solar industry there. So if they can do it, we can. Okay, just a brief look at the feed-in tariff program. It was put together as part of the Green Energy and Economy Act, 2009, Provincial Act. What it does is it guarantees fixed prices for 20-year contracts for renewable energy generated and fed into the grid. The policy is modeled at a very successful European policy. It's now used actually around the world, where by providing a rate that provides a reasonable return to investors in renewable energy, it creates an industry to supply those investors, and then drives the cost down through economies of scale. And in Germany, this has been in place now for 15 years, and has had and the cost of solar there is now less than half of what it was when it started. Obviously, the grid must be acceptable to accept the new capacity. There's a requirement that 60% of the value of the contracts are Ontario content. Now, the first 2 years of the program exceeded all expectations. I mean, first of all, the program met the targets that were 2018 within 2 years of 2009. So with the contracts already in place and the ones in the pipeline, they've already met that target. Also, the costs have come down, and I'll show you in the next slide how much they have come down in that time. The next phase of the FIT program starts later this month. They were told the 26th of June, and these are the comparative prices. So this shows you how much solar has dropped in price in the last 2 years. So whereas in 2009 they needed to offer 80 cents a kilowatt hour for small systems in order to make it a worthwhile investment. Now 55 is good enough. So you still make the same return, but because the cost is lower, they can pay a lower amount. Just to kind of put some of these prices in context, the yellow line is the cost there of solar in the 50-cent range. During the summer, Ontario Power Authority is paying a lot higher than that for the peaking power necessary to make the peak. We only maybe pay, was it 10 cents a kilowatt hour during peak times now? But the actual cost that the province is paying for power can be as high as $2, or at least a dollar many times. And this is because they have to fire up these gas turbine peaking plants, which lie idle most of the time. So what that really means is that any solar that's added to the grid in Ontario reduces the cost of providing power in the summer. And that's today, not sometime in the future. So it does put that cost of solar in context. Solar is already cost effective during peak times in the summer, and getting more so every year. This is the history of the co-op. To say we're a for-profit renewable energy cooperative, and a renewable energy cooperative is a new type of co-op that's defined under the Corporations Act as part of the Clean Energy Act, the Green Energy Act. Our vision is to promote renewable energy in Ottawa, but also provide all of the to provide all the benefits that renewable energy provides in the local area and provide the economic development as well. We have a current membership now, I think as of this morning, 77, and we have a board of directors of 9. We were lucky enough to get some startup grants, so these are really to help us provide some of the structure necessary to operate a co-op like we have, and these have been extremely valuable to us, as we wouldn't be able to get where we are today without those. We rely a lot on volunteer labor so far, but this is really necessary. In terms of our kind of plan or business plan for the next few years, we're focusing on that middle range of projects, and just go back to that one there, the rooftop 10 to 250 kilowatts. So 71 cents for current projects, 53 for 0.9 for the new one. That's an area that seems to be right for us. It's a reasonable amount of investment. The 250 kilowatt system is about $1.5 million, and we feel that that's kind of within our scope of operation in the next little while. In terms of financing, ultimately we would like to do some borrowing to help us finance projects. Our aim is long term is no more than 40% financing on the project. We're going to have annual preference share offerings like the one we're announcing today every year, or more often if we need to. An offering does exist for a year, but it sometimes takes several months to get it approved. So effectively, the actual window for raising funds is usually less than a year. Our plan for this year is to purchase turnkey, which means that the projects have already been approved. They've already got allocation on the grid. They've already been designed. They just need to be financed and built. So our objective there is to actually buy into the projects that have already been built. We would then pay for them while they're being built, and then take over full ownership of those projects when they produce revenue, which should be in early 2013. These projects, because they're already approved, will be at the higher rate of 71 cents or 80 cents for the smaller systems. Longer term, we will be partnering with some solar developers who are going to be resubmitting some of the projects that were not approved in the first round. The new rules will favor community ownership. We'll also develop our own projects, and we're hoping that those will be given even higher priority in the new rules. This is where we actually develop and design and everything our own projects from scratch. So our idea is to do a couple of projects or series of projects in 2012, and then later this year, when the new rules are out, start working on newer projects, which would be likely to be require investment later in 2013 or 2014. How our shares are structured: one member is membership shares. one share per member, $100. So this provides all the voting requirements that in the co-op. So this is like a normal co-op. You have one member, one vote. We have here at 77 members now. We hope to get 250 by the end of 2012, and then 500 by early 2014. Preference shares are the ones that we're going on sale today. Are available to members only, so you have to be a member first before you can buy a preference share. The actual offering itself was preceded, as they call it, by the Financial Services Commission of Ontario in December. We waited until today so that we can actually put it, mention the projects that we're going to be investing in as well. So we're effectively have that window of June 16th to August 27th, 2012. The minimum purchase is $5,000 and the maximum of $100,000. Some of the rules that govern the preference shares, they can be transferred and redeemed, but only with the permission of the board. This is in order to protect the cash flow of the co-op. As it's set out in the offering statement, there is no market for these shares. You can't sell them to brokers or in the public or whatever. You can only sell them to other members or sell them back to the co-op. So, and the co-op can only redeem them under really unusual circumstances if you really need to do that. So, and there's sufficient cash flow, because the whole cash flow of the project of the co-op is based on the revenue from projects. So we can't just take the capital back out again. These preference shares are non-voting. You use your membership share to vote. But they do have priority over membership shares in distribution of surplus. In other words, the dividend is always paid first before any other, if there is any, is paid out to members or to whatever the members decide to do with that funds. We have worked out an RSP eligibility for, like, to set up self-directed RSPs for the OREC shares, preference shares, through the Workers' Co-op Federation and consent for trust. The Workers' Co-op Federation has set up a whole system for any co-op across the country or credit union across the country to make their shares RSP eligible. And consent for trust, which is a Saskatoon-based trust company that provides services to credit unions and co-ops, is backstopping it. At the end of the 20 years, then the shares are redeemed. At that point, they will have no value because all of your capital will have been returned. Members of the OREC have to be Ottawa residents to join, but we do say that if you leave Ottawa, then you can take your ownership with you. And as long as you have membership and wherever you are, you can invest in new offerings in the future. Okay, how we distribute the revenue? You have to have, obviously the board can decide to hold back a certain portion of the revenue every year to make sure that the cash flow for the coming years is okay. Then the dividend is paid on the shareholdings, and certain amounts of capital are returned to the preference shareholders. If there is any surplus left, then the membership can decide what to do with that at the annual meeting on the recommendation of the board. The intent is to return all of the capital. In other words, if you're investing $10,000, then we return all that $10,000 to you over this 20-year period, starting in year 6. So 1/15 of the capital is returned every year, and then the dividend of 5% is our objective. And then if there's any surplus left, then it's up to the discretion of the membership, but we would hope we could kind of to plow that back into the community in some form. Just to show you how investment might work, if you have a $10,000 investment in OREC, then this is the way in which it would work, is that you would be starting to get a dividend for the first 5 years, and then you would start to get the capital returned, and the dividend would diminish in proportion to your capital that's left in your account. So then the overall effect would be to make $6,250 on the $10,000. Okay, just describe the projects that we're now hoping to invest in. We have made an arrangement with Visio Energy to purchase up to 5 systems on housing co-ops in Ottawa. So these are the small, they're microfits, so in total will be about 50 kilowatts in there. Because they're microfits, the rules say that the contract can only be held by the property owner. So the housing co-ops will hold the microfit contract, but we will kind of administer it on their behalf. We will own the system and receive the revenue from them that they receive from Ontario Power Authority, and then in return we will pay them a lease payment for use of their roof. We hope to have at least 4 of being built by the end of the summer, so they be in commercial operation before the end of the year. The other project that we're hoping to establish or to invest in is a much larger project, 250 kilowatts, which is more in the range of $1.5 million. Is that with this, as we raise the capital from the sale of shares, then we would gradually buy into the project over the next, when I say 2 years, it means 2012, 2013. We're depending on how much we raise. If we raise sufficient capital in this particular offering, then we would buy into it sooner. If we need another offering statement in the fall or early 2013, then we would use that to buy the rest of it. So this is, as I say, this is a project that's already been approved, the one we're hoping to get. So all it needs is the go-ahead to build, and it's been designed, everything is ready to go. So and once we have paid for it, we become the sole owner of the contract and the system. We still pay a lease payment to the owner of the building, but we own the fit contract as well as the system, so we receive the money directly. So we're still working on this isn't it, this is just a picture. Okay, so how do you actually purchase a preference share? You have to be a member. You do have to read the 70-page offering statement that is designed for the protection of the person buying the share. So it is important. So you complete the subscription form, you make out the check to Concentra in trust. Now this is Concentra with a different hat on, which I'll explain in a minute, because to start with, we hold all the funds that are subscribed in what's called escrow, which keeps it effectively in a legal limbo while we raise the funds, so it can't be used for anything else. At this stage, to indicate how much goes into self-directed RSP, there is some catch there that if you wanted to put new money into RSP, you can put it in now. If it's going to be RSP money that is transferred from another RSP into the OREC shares, then that can really only be done later in the summer after the money is drawn out of escrow. And then we have the same thing August 27th. And we hope to have another share offering in late 2012 if we need it. If we don't need it, then we would not have another share offering until the next series of projects came along, the ones we'll be applying for this year. So they'll more likely be this time next year or maybe later. As I mentioned, the funds that are subscribed for shares, preference shares, we are required to keep that in escrow, which protects those funds until we have the investment opportunity secured and we've raised a minimum amount. So if neither of those two, any of those two are not met, then the funds would go back to by August 27th, and the funds would go back to the owners. So the money is protected there until the investment opportunity is there and we've raised the minimum. Now the minimum is set because that's what we need for the first project, so they're really the same thing. Once that money has come out of escrow and we have it now available for investment, then the shares themselves are issued and then the RSPs will be set up at that time. Now obviously there will be a cost associated with the RSP, which the co-op will provide the ability to do that, but the actual cost of setting it up would have to be borne by the member. There's obviously some costs that we have in terms of taking over some of these turnkey projects. We've been, as I mentioned earlier, lucky enough to get some seed startup financing. We probably will need to use some of the money that's raised in order to do the due diligence on the projects. We've included that in our cash flow analysis and costing. And then we would invest the money raised in projects between the end of August and January 2013. So these projects will start to earn revenue in 2013. Some of them hopefully before the beginning of the year, others maybe near the beginning of the year. The bigger one might be February or March before it generates revenue. So then we're going to be in a position to pay that first dividend for the year 2013. And then in 2018, you'd also start to get the capital back. So year 1 would be 2013, and year 5 would be 2018. So that's really what we have. As I mentioned, on the website, as of this morning, you can download the full offering statement and business plan, and we'll go from there.